you're gonna hear two things. One is asking matters and your asking style. And asking styles is a concept that was developed by Andrea Kihlstedt and Brian Saber, and has been shared with nonprofits and boards and other volunteers nationally and internationally. And it comes out of the belief that there's no such thing as an ideal fundraiser. People may think that somebody who is a really great fundraiser is bold and daring and has just plenty of contacts, and kind of maybe along the lines of someone who's very comfortable in sales. But the actual fact is that everybody can bring their skills and talents and personality to be effective in fundraising. And when you determine your own style, you can be more confident in making the ask. So my foray into this is that I discovered this book when I was at an Association of Fundraising Professionals International Conference. There's a little book, it's like 88 pages, and it's called Asking Styles, Harness Your Personal Fundraising Power. I sometimes pick up books and read them and get something out of each thing I read. But with this one, a light went off, and it just seemed to make a lot of sense to me that it can be effective for so many different people who have a fear of fundraising. And I actually co-presented to our Alaska chapter a couple years ago about asking styles, and have been wanting to share this with others again because it makes a lot of sense. So this book is no longer available. The Asking Styles has been transformed into Asking Matters, which is an online coaching, support system, training program based on asking styles. So Andrea Kihlstedt had sold this to Brian Saber, and I looked on because I thought, boy, this would be great. Maybe we can actually buy asking styles for the affiliates. And I see that copies go on Amazon for between $600 and $1,800. So I'm gonna hold on to this little book. But I did get in touch with Brian Saber and asked if we can use the concepts, and he shared with us most of the slides, and we were able to build slides around those basic concepts. So it's copyrighted, but we have permission to go through this. So the goals for today is to understand the 4 asking styles, to identify your own asking style, and if you're able to take the 3-minute assessment, you'll know what your primary asking style is and your secondary asking style. And then you can use your asking style and keep in the back of your mind when you're doing preparation, cultivation, when you're doing the ask, when you work on stewardship, and then when you work with others on your team could be here at ACF, it could be other colleagues, it could be on the advisory board, but it's helpful to know. And I just want to say that this is where you can go to find your asking style. Now, granted, this is similar in some ways to Myers-Briggs and other kind of personality tests, but it's very short. It's 30 questions, I think it is. And we've had some conversation here about, also like with Myers-Briggs, if you do something one time, you might get one kind of assessment. If you have a different kind of attitude, you can have a different assessment. So we know that, I'm going to point out that Katie here on staff had said that she did this twice and got 2 very different assessments. So just know that one of them will probably sort of ring more true to you. So if you do it and you get 2, then just know that one of them, you can probably make your own assessment about where you'd fall in this in terms of what your asking style is. When you do the assessment, you'll find out your primary asking style and a secondary asking style. And it's just good to know those as you are proceeding and thinking about preparation for donor meetings and thinking about how you might be in an ask. So the way that the asking style is determined is based on 2 sets of criteria. The first one is, how do you interact with people? We hear the term extrovert and introvert a lot, and we think it's a shortcut. I mean, if somebody is loud and boisterous, they think they're extroverts, or if they're quiet, they're introverts. But in actuality, Susan Cain wrote a great book called Quiet on introverts, and You can be a presenter, you can be a very social person, you can be out there all the time. The former superintendent for the Lincoln School District, Carol Como, thought of herself as an introvert. It's how you derive energy. And so if you're in social situations or you're making presentations and you need a lot of quiet time before and you need a lot of quiet time afterwards, you're probably an introvert, even though you may be dynamic and a great speaker and capable of being with people all the time. But if you're an introvert, you're taking time to compose your ideas and you're thinking before you talk. You're maybe a little bit more careful about how you prepare things. If you're an extrovert, you like being around people and you get energy around that. You might feel isolated and a little bit bored if you're by yourself all the time. And you might talk to think, meaning that you're not going to just talk without empty ideas, but you're going to be talking as you're having a conversation with other people. Your ideas become very clear. You're sparked by them. You're talking and you don't need to prepare ahead of time. You don't have to prepare notes and scripts and things like that. So those are the two. This is one axis you will see is extrovert and introvert. And another axis is how do you take in information? If you're an analytic, you're very fact-oriented and inductive. You like data. You like to have a lot of information. You may like spreadsheets. You may like numbers. But you want to know, for example, in terms of donors, you may want to know what is their position in a company? How many years have they lived in the community? What else do we know about them? Very factual. Intuitive, you're deductive and you're idea oriented, and you can take those ideas and then you can turn them into data. So we'll get into this a little bit later, but instead of the background information for you on a donor might be helpful, but you would prefer to sit down and talk with that donor. And you'd like to see what kind of information you can get from them and what they will share with you, which can tell you a lot more if you're intuitive than things that you're going to see on a sheet. So if you put these together, there's 4 combinations: analytic and extrovert, intuitive and extrovert, intuitive and introvert, and analytic and introvert. And these are kind of hard to remember, kind of keeping your mind. So with the asking styles, you come up with these names that might be a little bit easier to remember. Rainmaker is the analytic extrovert. Go-getter is the intuitive extrovert. The kindred spirit is the introvert intuitive. And the mission controller is the introvert analytic. And the nice thing is that you can really, you can use these and realize that your skills, sometimes people who are mission controllers, who really like data, maybe like to be alone, like to really organize things, they may not think that they're the best people to ask, but you can see that there's a role for you in here. That I'm actually looking to somebody who is a mission controller in our organization. So everybody has strengths. Of course, we don't all fit in cleanly into one box. And yes, we do act differently in different situations. But for most of us, one of these will define us generally. And so that's just a good thing to know. We're going to start going through these now and looking at the asking style traits to see how these might fit into fundraising. So if you're a rainmaker, remember you're on that analytic side, you're fact-based, goal-oriented, strategic, competitive, and driven. And your energy is focused outward. You like to be with other people. You find inspiration in the energy of other people. You like to have concrete data. So what that means is that you want to have as much information about your affiliate, for example, in terms of, how much is in your endowment now? How much is in your operating endowment? How many grants have you made and to whom? You really like to be prepared and informed. But one nice thing about the rainmaker is that you can adapt your style more easily. Because you are extroverted and you draw upon the energy of others, you can read them and you can adapt fairly easily. So that's kind of a nice characteristic. You tend to be goal-oriented, and this competitive and driven is not a negative thing. but it's that you're excited about goals. So when you have the Rasmussen Foundation match, you're going to be excited about reaching that. And that's a real inspiration for you. You're going to think about the prospective donors with the greatest capacity to give, because that goal in that amount of time is going to motivate you. So that. On the go-getter, they're intuitive extroverts. So again, as an extrovert, you enjoy others and building relationships easily, and you accept all kinds of information, not just factual data, but you also trust your own instincts and your sense of the situation, including community trends and things that you're seeing. They don't have to be written down, but you have a sense of what's happening. You tend to be big picture people. Just the big picture, big personality people. You're inspired by concepts about the difference that philanthropy can make. And you can use details, but sometimes the nitty gritty might actually be just distracting or feel less inspiring to you. So it could be okay. But I remember when I was at the University of Alaska Anchorage, I remember writing a script for somebody who was off the cuff used to speaking, as a dean who was used to speaking, and he was stilted and challenging having a script and having to be nailed down. I thought after that, no more scripts. He's going to go with the flow and read the room. So you're best if you're in the moment. And so go-getters don't do as well if they're scripted or if you have to memorize information. Being on the intuitive side, go-getters are forward-looking. So you're actually able to inspire and be inspired about visions about how your community will be a better place if people come together to add to your affiliates endowment. So you really can see the future. You can paint that picture really nicely. You can connect with donors through energy and enthusiasm. And so we can go to the kindred spirits. And I know that I heard of a number of kindred spirits on the other line and in this room as well. Kindred spirits are intuitive introverts. So if you're on the introverted side, you're more private and internally focused. And while you may hold your thoughts and feelings close, your intuitive nature makes you sensitive to the needs and interests of others. As a kindred spirit, you're a really great listener. You may be considered shy or quiet. You may be happy to let others speak, but you're listening closely to others and paying attention to what matters to them. And that's a really important trait when it comes to fundraising. You can really get to understand a donor's interests and motivations and match their interests with opportunities at your affiliate. And these qualities show that you don't have to be an extrovert to solicit a gift. Because of your skills and your attentive nature, you can essentially what's called listen your way to a gift. You really help bring out what a donor is interested in, and you can affirm that, and you can continue to reinforce it and think about if there's a sub-fund that might work nicely for them, or you might be able to suggest a sub-fund, or somehow you're matching their interests. Your quality and sincerity is really appreciated by donors. The mission controller, and we have some of those in this room, and you're on the introverted side, and so you may be thoughtful and cautious about speaking, but when you speak, others should pay attention because you've really done your homework. So being analytic, you like factual, correct data. For example, you may want to know how much your affiliate has granted in the last year, what you'll be granting out this year. You may want to understand how much is given to social services, to education, to the arts, and other areas. So being quietly thoughtful, you want to take time to process and analyze, and you don't want to be put in front of a donor until you're prepared and you feel like you have the information you need. Every organization needs some mission controllers, and every advisory board needs some mission controllers. Sometimes there can be advisory boards that have too many, and that could be a problem, or an organization, but you do want to have mission controllers because others depend upon you for questions about programs and budgets and methodologies. And when you're ready to ask for a donation and you're ready to be put in front of a donor, you're going to connect to donors because you're going to be thorough and have a detailed presentation. So Another way you can think about your style is what kind of questions you ask about fundraising. So a rainmaker will say, what's the goal? You're motivated about reaching that goal. A go-getter is, what's the opportunity? And by the way, going back to what's the goal, part of the rainmaker's sensibility will be, what's the goal? How can I help achieve it? Who are the donors who are most likely to make gifts that will help us get to that goal? So those are the kinds of goal-oriented questions. The go-getter says, what's the opportunity? If we raise $100,000 for our community's endowment, how will it make our community a better place? How can I paint that picture for others? That's how the go-getter is thinking. The kindred spirit is, what moves my heart? What will move a donor's heart? Who has the passion for this affiliate, and how can we work together to build a long-term philanthropic fund that will forever benefit our community? The mission controller says, what's the plan? Do we have a development plan for reaching our goals? Do we have an advisory board? Who's on the advisory board who's going to be setting up the appointments? Who's going to be following through? Who's going to be best matched with this person and with that person? What materials will we have in place? What questions will be asked? And are we ready to answer them? So we've got people with all different skills here. Before you go to meet with a donor, it's really important to do research. And that actually, it's really very important because it shows respect for your donor. You're not going in cold. And we talked last month about building your donor lists and getting information and ways that you can get information about others, and how people who are on your advisory board can fill in information. There's other information you can get through property databases and other things like that. But you really do, if you can, you want to learn about where donors have given before, what causes they care about, what boards they serve on. So you'll have some of that information. And when you look at your own asking style in these different quadrants, if you're a rainmaker, you will want to have as extensive research as you can. You will want to know about their giving history, and that is available on, their giving history to ACF is certainly available through our database. And you want to have as much bio data as possible. Again, where do they serve? How long do they live in the community? Those kinds of things. It helps you be prepared when you're going to sit down with that donor. On the intuitive side, in fact, I'm going to do both of these as the intuitive side. Again, you may not want as much research. You may not be as fresh with that research. And there is a theory that says you can, research to death. You can do more research, and you really feel like you need to have more and more and more data. But you're going to know more about a donor when you're sitting in front of them and you're having that conversation. So you do want to have some knowledge. You want to do some minimal research, find out somewhat about their giving. You want to know who they are generally. Maybe you want to know about their personality type as much as anything else, so you can match the right person. And again, going back to the mission controller, on the analytics side, it's going to be like the rainmaker, wanting extensive research, detailed giving, full bio data. So, what's that? No. So I will say that asking styles, we'll talk about this at the end, but if you go onto their website, their Asking Matters, is really focused on making the ask, and they skip over a lot about what I would call the cultivation or donor engagement stage. But we're not going to cover it here, but just remember, you will likely be meeting with your prospective donors a number of times before you're ready to make the ask. And depending on where you're at again in your asking style, sometimes people feel comfortable about asking people, we've been talking for a few times, are you ready for us to start talking about a gift to the affiliate? You can even ask about asking. But just keep in mind, we're not really going over this right now. And the more that you do relationship building with somebody who's a high capacity donor, the more likely you're going to be able to ask for a high level gift. And if you ask on the first date, you will probably get something, and you will probably get a small gift. If you build that relationship and you really know what a donor's passions are, you may be able to get a gift currently, a larger gift. You may be able to get a legacy gift. but you're going to know what's going to work best for the donor. So we're going to skip over the cultivation parts of this and go into the ask, because I know that's what a lot of folks are mostly interested in. So we're going to go through each style on preparing for the ask and setting up the meeting. If you're a rainmaker, the nice thing about rainmaker is that you're able to talk to just about anybody. So if you have a goal and you know that there's people in your close circle of friends, maybe family members or colleagues or relatives, and they have the ability to make a gift, and you think that they actually will be interested, you're comfortable talking with them. That's different from some other styles, because you just see them that they're part of your partnership in reaching your goal. You can more easily handle a no, and you know that no doesn't always mean no in the world of fundraising. It might be not now or not for this particular cause. You also can ask for a stretch gift. You know that you're not going to ask for just the smallest gift you can ask. You might really be excited about helping somebody stretch and give a larger gift to your affiliate. If you're, as you prepare for the ask, you want to select some high capacity donors who can help you achieve the affiliate's goal, because again, you're very focused on the goal. So you want to assemble all the information you can need about your affiliate, campaign goals, giving options, so you know that you can also call here and ask us help with giving options. And you also should be willing to think about prospective donors who are not yet involved, because again, rainmakers are a little bit more comfortable reaching out to others. To set up the appointment, you actually can pick up the phone to call your donor, because you're not too shy about that. You can then follow up with other calls or emails. Rainmakers don't want to be hanging by the phone waiting for somebody to call back, so you can offer several times for an appointment. You can say, for example, I'm available on Wednesday at 3 or Friday at 5 or whatever. Is there a time that would work best for your schedule? And if not these times, how about next week? And if you don't hear back, it's actually very helpful to follow up again and set yourself reminders. And for rainmakers, absolutely take the time to get to know donors' interests, have several meetings with them. And what rainmakers was helpful to have on hand are your facts and figures. These are just things you can have to help you make the case for support. Strategic plans, grant information, and outcome analyses. Who has benefited? How have they used those grants? And what's been the benefit in the community? So here's an example for a 5-part ask for the rainmaker. And I'll go through the rainmaker one a little bit more than the others, because this will end up being fairly similar for each of the styles. But in this, you're going to want to have the introduction. And it may seem silly for some people to go through this, but honestly, I think that if you're the type that may freeze up when you're thinking about what do I do when I'm sitting down with a donor, it's helpful just to think through these steps. You're going to have the introduction where you're going to just talk about everyday topics, where you saw them the last time, maybe you saw them at a show, something, an event in the community, but you're going to just have some conversation about that. If you are an extrovert, this will actually be fairly easy for you. This part will be very easy for you. In the dialogue part, you'll make a transition, and you're going to bring them back. You're going to start making a conversation about the purpose of the meeting. And so, may say, I know you know some about our affiliate. Since you're a community leader, I wanted to let you know about some of the things we've been doing recently. Or you may ask questions. Do they know about some of the organizations that have been funded recently? If you know that they really love the arts, you may ask about, did you know that such and such an organization got a grant from your affiliate? But you're going to ask some questions and have this transition as a part of this. Then you have your presentation, and this should actually be fairly short, 3 minutes probably. And you can remind the prospect of the connection that they both have with the organization, that they have with the organization, with the affiliate if they have it. And you might say personally, Jim, as you know, I've been on the advisory board of the affiliate for the last 2 years. Or I know that you've come to several of our grant making events. And then you might want to really reinforce what the affiliate is doing now, and what this campaign is for, and why the Rasmussen Foundation is behind it, why there's a matching component. But you want to present that. Now, this is the hardest part for most people, is to ask for a gift. And you can state our goal is, and all the affiliates have set goals for each year. So you can say our goal is blank, to build our community's endowment for the long term, or you could say our next or 5-year goals, 4 years goals is this. And here's where you can modify this if you like. You can say, would you consider a gift of X? Or you could say, would you consider a gift of such and such each year for the next 3 years, next 5 years towards that goal? And you can do this in a way, if you're more comfortable, to say several donors have chosen to make a multi-year gift. Is that something you would be interested in? But it is important to make the ask. And then it's really important to wait.
Oh, I apologize. I had a question that just came up. When you're going over the ask, and when you get to the part where you say, would you consider a gift of blank, does it make a difference if you specify a specific amount? Like, would you make a gift of $100 versus would you make a gift in general? Does it make a difference there?
I'm going to tell you the best practices, and then I'm going to tell you how sometimes with community foundations it works. The best practices is that you really want to know your donor, and if you have a fairly well-off donor, somebody who has capacity to give, you definitely want to give an amount. If you don't give an amount, they're going to think $100, $50. So you can tailor this and say, we know that you're very generous. You've given to many organizations in the past. You've been a donor. We hope you'll be a leadership donor here. Would you consider a gift of $10,000 to our organization? Would you consider a gift of $5,000? You want to do it in a way that you do want to be specific, because if you're seeking to raise funds, you really do need to give the donor some expectation of what you're raising. And if you're, I'm going to go back to this one.
Sorry.
It's okay. If you leave it too open, people may think, okay, they just think they need something from me, $50 or $100. Now, you can watch the donor's reaction, and sometimes people will not be able to do that, and they'll explain why. And you can absolutely go back and then say, it sounds like the time is not good for you at this level. Would you consider a gift at a slightly smaller level? But you're going to set a benchmark for them. If you're talking more about a legacy gift, that might be slightly different. That's why I was saying this is a little different on the community foundation side for legacy gifts. But for current gifts, you actually want to say an amount.
Okay.
And I know that's very hard for kindred spirits. So if they're not ready to make a gift, let's go to the last one, the close. If someone says yes, well, especially if you're on that analytics side, you're probably going to have your materials with you. But you can, and I know most, if not all, of the affiliates have forms to fill out, and some of them have multi-year pledge forms. And these are the ways you can close. You can really just confirm the details. If you somehow don't have it with you, you can ask, how would you like to make that gift? You can say, there's many ways of making it. You can make it online. You can make it by a recurring gift, but you do want to confirm those details of the gifts. And I have to apologize because what I don't have here is what to do right after you, the stewardship side. But I can send that out to folks. But you do want to confirm that. Go ahead. You have something?
I just want to make a comment on number 4. Number 4, wait for the response. That's probably the hardest of all of the ask part, because you need to hear what they have to say. And the inclination is to jump in and say, blah, 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 and talk because you're nervous about it. And you've asked for $1 million and you don't know how they're going to react to it. So that's the hardest part, but I think that's one of the most important pieces of the whole ask.
Absolutely. And you basically, some people say, sit on your hands or do something else to remind yourself just to wait. You really do want to wait. And you want to hear, because sometimes people need some time to process and to think about it. So it's really, really important. So thank you, Anne, for that. And if a donor is not ready to make a gift right there and then, you can ask, can I follow up with you again? When would be a good time we could talk about this again? Maybe in a week or 2 weeks? And if they really say, look, I've got 2 kids in college and an ailing mother, and this is really a bad time, you could say, well, we really want to keep you involved, and we'll let you know about the events that we have coming up. You're a leader in the community. You're really important to us. So you find ways to keep them involved. So I'm going to move on so we get through all these styles. So if you are a go-getter, you, again, being on the extroverted side, you like connecting with others. You may not be as interested in complex processes. I didn't mention this, but on the rainmaker side, they may have a list of donors, like, okay, give me 10 donors, 15 donors, I'm gonna work my way through these. But you may not wanna have that long list, and it may be a little bit overwhelming to you. So it's best just pick 2 or 3 donors, prospective donors at a time. And because you're a charismatic person, you're energetic, you can also include prospects who haven't yet connected with the affiliate. The folks who are more on the extroverted side are the ones who can say, I know you don't know anything about our affiliate yet, but I'd really like to sit down and talk with you about that. So that would be, that's a really important thing. And I'm going to flip back here, make sure I have these things here. Okay. And for you, in making a case, you're really, it's going to come to you fairly naturally, but you like these ideas, these bigger ideas. You like stories are going to be really helpful, not just the stories of folks you've helped so far, but also people you can help in the future. But because you may not be incredibly, you may want to be you may be a little tied down with the details. In case a donor asks for data, just have a fact sheet close by. And you want to help donors share their heart and their interests, the best match with your affiliate. You can get very excited, and true go-getters can be really charismatic. You may find that, you're kind of casting the donor under your spell, but really you want to make sure they're under the spell of the affiliate and not under your own spell. And it's actually just really, it's important to think about this, because you want to connect that donor, not with you, but to the affiliate. And to set up the appointment, you want to use a phone. So resist the opportunity to just talk on the phone, because you can naturally get into conversations with people. And it really is better to meet in person. You can share more information, you can see them eye to eye, you can read their body language. And so just make sure you do make that set up an appointment to meet in person. Unlike a rainmaker who may schedule time for themselves to call from 9 to 11, they're going to make all their calls 9 to 11. The go-getter, it may be better to make a call when you're more inspired to, when you feel like your energy is at the right level and you're excited. Just make sure you have some time during the week that you can make those calls, but get the calls done. And for the go-getter, if you have a vision statement, maybe it's something you want to write down for yourself, stories, that one-page fact sheet so you can have on hand the data in case people need it. So similarly, I'm not going to go as great depth here, but similarly, the introduction, again, this is going to be easier for you, that you're an extrovert. You're going to pose open-ended questions, and you really want to get the donor talking. Make sure that you do give the donor time to talk, because go-getters get excited, and so make sure there's room and space there. And when you give the presentation, your focus, because you're forward-thinking, is on the long-term impact your affiliate will have, and you're going to be talking about how you can partner together to achieve this vision. but make sure your donor has time to ask questions. And again, you're going to ask the similar question when you're going to ask for support. And again, you're going to zip it and you're going to wait for the response, and don't keep on talking, because you may be inspired to keep on going on and on and on because you're so excited about what this might mean for the donor, but you just pause. And then you close, and for go-getters, sometimes that may be hard for them to close because they want to continue the conversation. They're so excited that the donor is going to be working with them on this. But again, you have to ask for specifics, and you have to know how the gift is going to come in and how they want to be recognized. So those are some tips for go-getters. Kindred spirits. Okay. So kindred spirits, it may be harder for you to hear no because you don't like conflicts. So it's best if you select people who are already connected with the affiliate, people who may have given some gifts before, and maybe they've given some sample gifts, but they want to, you think they're ready maybe for a larger gift, or they've shown that they're interested. And so those are people who've already shown their interest. They've come to some events. Those are the folks you want to ask. But you may ask others on the advisory board or with your colleagues to solicit your friends and your family and your colleagues, because that may just be too hard for you. It just may be uncomfortable. And just start with 1 or 2 names just to get started so you can get going in this process. And the positive thing about kindred spirits, again, is that you're strongest when you're soliciting people who share your beliefs and your commitments. So people who are already inclined to give. And some questions that you can get to know a donor is, what are your visions for our community? And what donations have given you the most satisfaction? What values guide you in your work and in your life? And these are actually questions that others can ask too. But if you need to have some questions on hand, those are some questions you can have on hand. The kindred spirit, again, being more on the intuitive side, may not have all the facts and the numbers. So again, have a fact sheet for your ready reference. You will have specific stories. You'll also have personal experiences because you're already moved by your own heart. And so your goal is to understand your donor and their donor's interests, and you can ask questions that renew their interest in the affiliate. So, and when you set up the appointment, this is maybe something that Jenny was saying before, you can actually send an email, or a letter, you can send a card to them, and you can tell the donor why you would like to meet. You could say, I'd really like to talk to you about something that's important to me, and it's given me a lot of satisfaction, and that's our community foundation affiliate. And you want to send that, and then you will need to follow up with a phone call. But if picking up the phone is the hardest thing for you, start out with an email or a letter. And this was a little note that I had seen in the book that said, if you tend to put off your follow-up, if it becomes uncomfortable to you, you might ask somebody else to give you a little reminder, like, make sure I'm calling this week. I said I was going to call, just check in on me, make sure I've done that. And this is going to be a little harder, but insist on meeting one-on-one with the person. It really does make a difference. And again, it may be easier for you to talk over the phone, but do try to have that time to meet in person. So you'll want the mission statement, personal stories, that 1-page ready reference sheet. And you may also, because you know that people are really moved by their heart, you may offer a visit to grantees so people can see the impact directly. So the 5-part ask for the kindred spirit, the introduction may be the hardest for the kindred spirits, being on the intuitive side. So you can actually write down some questions for yourself or some topics if you need to. You can script yourself a little bit. But some other things you can do is acknowledge that you're a little uncomfortable, that, this may seem a little awkward, and I'm feeling a little awkward, but I'm really excited to be here with you. You can also just, if you're focusing on your donor and putting them at ease, that may help in the introduction. And the dialogue, again, you might want to have those open-ended questions sort of written down in advance, and you practice them with somebody else. In the presentation, you can lead with your heart. You can tell the donor why you care and how you got involved, why you give, and try to relate it to them as much as possible as well. And you can then build upon their interests, what you know about them. I'm not going to go over the ask because it's going to be the same ask. And then again on the close, it may be difficult for you because you don't want to put somebody on the spot. And so you may have to bring a colleague if you need to, but you can also just practice saying, that's so exciting. I'm so happy that you're interested in making a gift. It's, you know, we can talk about the details of that gift now, but you do want to get the details of the gift. Okay, the mission controllers. So mission controllers work really well with other analytic individuals and corporations and foundations, because these are the kinds of folks that like lots of information. They want to have lots of data. So I will say that if you're working with professional advisors, engineers, CPAs, attorneys, really great to have a mission controller who's going to have a lot of factual information on their hands. You're also, because you know that this is important for your organization, you're willing to help other priority donors that may have been overlooked. But you can also work with multiple donors at a time. You may have your own spreadsheet to say, I'm going to make one call a week. Here's who I'm calling this week. Here's who I'm calling next week. Here's who I'm calling next week. But you're being, you know, very organized about that. So you do need to take the time you need to prepare thoroughly. You're going to bring questions with you to get the conversation going. And you'll have, I guess I didn't realize it because I do this and others here do this as well, is you have a full pack of materials that will guide you through the solicitation, and you'll have a copy for your donor as well. So you'll be looking at the same things together and going through all of the sheets together. When you set up the appointment, again, you're a little bit more on the introverted side. You can send your donors an email or a letter letting you know you'll be calling to set up the meeting, and include the information that you would want to know if you were a donor. So especially if you're thinking about the CPA, the attorney, the doctors, what is the kind of information that's going to get them interested? Maybe it's some information that there's tax smart ways of making a donation. Maybe there's ways that they can make a gift now and we can help them with their estate planning. But some other things that are going to be very helpful to them. And you're going to have to be prepared also to explain why an in-person meeting is really important. And so this was interesting that the recommendations are have the annual reports on hand, the grant making data, and perhaps forecasts on the impact of a future endowment. So if your endowment is $100,000 now, but it could be $3 million in 5 years, this is how much money will be generated annually with an endowment of $3 million. They can help you get there. So you're going to have that kind of information. You're going to be comfortable talking about those numbers. On the introduction, so the 5-part ask, introduction, again, you can, it may be a little bit difficult to make the small chat, but you want to focus on your affiliate while you're there. And for everybody in the room, when I talk about the affiliate, of course, I'm talking about all the programs that we're working on as well. The same thing with the dialogue. You want to have some open-ended questions. A lot of times mission controllers can really like data and think it's so important, but you kind of need to pay attention to your prospective donor. And if their eyes start to glaze over, you might say, is this enough, or would you like me to go on? So you want to be flexible. If you've got your script and people are starting to glaze over, you can start to veer and go in another direction. So be flexible on that. And you've got the presentation. That's also be aware if the donor is restless. When you're going to make your ask, wait for the response. And on the closing, that actually will be fairly easy for mission controllers. So there's a question about, does a donor style matter? Because you're really being aware of who you are. Does it matter who the donor is? Well, you know, a lot of times it is nice if you know what your donor style is and you can match somebody on the advisory board with the same kind of style as a donor. But the reason why it's really important to know your asking style is that when you're in a situation that may be uncomfortable for you and you're making an ask, it's really going to be hard to remember what your donor's interests and concerns are and such. And we often revert to our natural style and the patterns that were most comfortable for us. So if we know our style fairly well, we know what we need to do to be prepared, and we know how to frame the questions and that type of thing. So it also, doesn't solve the problem if you know your donor style, but you don't really know your own style, is it doesn't help you feel like, you know, you're really capable of asking for a gift, because every one of those 4 styles are very capable of asking for a gift and can build upon strengths. So I'm going to quickly go over partnering and just tell you that the nice thing is that it's really important in terms of cultivating, especially in asking for a gift. You don't, not only should you not, you don't have to go by yourself, but you shouldn't go by yourself. You should actually go with somebody else. You're more effective that way. And you might think that you might think it would be challenging to go, let me see if I can do this well. You might think it'd be challenging to go with somebody who's opposite of you, but if you do go with someone with an opposite style of you, they can help fill in the skills and qualities that you don't have. Now, there's a little bit of a challenge here, and it's a good thing to be aware of this ahead of time, because a rainmaker might think that a kindred spirit's focus on emotion is a waste of time. I just get to it, right? And a rainmaker's straightforward attitude might strike a kindred spirit as being overly aggressive and maybe even kind of cruel. So you want to know that ahead of time. If you've got a go-getter and they're really flexible, it might strike a mission controller as being careless or even playing loose with the facts. And a mission controller's insistence on details and specificity might strike a go-getter as boring and trivial. But if you can figure this out ahead of time and talk about your own strengths and talk about who plays what role in the ask, then you're going to be a lot stronger. And these are the ways: rainmaker, kindred spirit. If you can match up like that, it's great. If you can match up the go-getter and the mission controller, great. It's not always going to happen that way. Sometimes you think that you might go with somebody who's more like you, but the dangers of that is that 2 extroverts can hog the limelight and talk over the donor. So if you're going with 2 rainmakers, or a rainmaker and a go-getter, talk about who's going to speak about what topics and when you're going to ask questions and who's going to play that role. If there's 2 introverts, you might sit in silence and kind of wait for the donor to take the initiative, which might feel really awkward to them. So you're going to, again, decide in advance who's going to take the lead. If you have 2 analytics, it kind of might leave the donor feeling a little bit cold. So you want to have some stories to bring with you. And if you have 2 intuitives, it might lead an analytic donor feeling unconvinced. So you want to have the facts and figures that are there for you. Just know, what you will need to have. So there is a website for Asking Matters. The book is no longer around, but Asking Matters has free resources. So if this is interesting to you, there's free video trainings, there's other free things that you can download. And I think they also do some free coaching. It's like, not free, but it's like $20 a month or something like that. So it's this is available. And